Hey guys, Garage here, and behind me I've got the new Dinking DK2300i-M inverter generator. I know Dinking is a contract manufacturer for a ton of different brands out there where that brand orders a generator from Dinking in their colors, and then that brand slaps their logos and stuff all over the generator, and then they sell it out to the masses as their own product. So this is the source. Dinking is finally starting to bring their own brand generators here to the US, which is really cool. But until this model, I didn't see anything too compelling. It was just the same stuff that was being private labeled to other companies out there. But this one blew my mind. I saw the specifications on it. 30 pounds, 1800 watts, 2300 watt surge, and this is the size of other gas generators that I've reviewed. They're in the 1000 watt to 1100 watt range. This thing is absolutely tiny. I mean, look how small this thing is. It fits. Like usually a generator takes up a big space on my little utility table here, and this thing is taking up no room at all. Like, it is physically tiny. And I told Dinking I'd love to get that one in for review, because that is a differentiator, right? This thing is really set apart from the rest of the pack, because not only is it tiny, it weighs like nothing, and that just blows my mind. They just keep making them smaller and more powerful, right? So we're going to do all of our normal testing. We're going to be load testing. We're going to be going through the ins and outs. We're going to tear it completely down, see how this thing is built, see how well it's built. And I'm excited to do that today for you guys. Only thing I can tell you guys, and just straight up, because Dinking sent this to me, it will in no way, shape, or form change the outcome of my review or change the total message at the end of this video of what I think of this generator. I'm here to be honest. You got to build a good reputation when you're on YouTube, and I'm not going to fib to you guys. And if I do find problems with products, I do let the manufacturer know. I do let them have a chance to correct it, but I do not hide that information from you. You will know if I find a problem or if there's anything wrong with any of the generators that get sent to me. So I make that promise to you guys. But hey, let's get on this. I got a lot of testing to do. This is going to be fun, and hopefully this one finds a home with you if it meets all of its specifications. Let's check it out. There's the box. This is what you get with it. You've got an oil funnel. I love this type of oil funnel. You get a basic toolkit, just like most generators, and you get a user manual with your generator. Let's have a good look around this generator. So we do have our indicator lights, low oil overload output. We have dual 20 amp receptacles. We have USB Type-C standard USB, parallel connection, CO carbon monoxide indicator LED. We can reset the inverter. If we do put it in overload, you can reset it without turning the generator off. We do have our eco switch here, basically a low idle mode we can turn on. And we have a huge, beautiful intake vent for the inverter. You can see the inverter behind it, the heatsink. So it's got a really good amount of airflow that can cool that inverter down, which you do need in something this tiny. So let's take a look around further. We do have a sealable gas cap lid, so we can turn the venting off on this, which is great for transport. On the side here is our choke. We can set it to run, or we can turn the engine off. Now, all of these do have the same capability. While they don't note it, if you turn your switch just before the engine dies and leave it there, it will drain the bowl of the carburetor. So the generator will keep running until the carb is empty, and then once it dies, you can just flip it to off. Just all of your general stickers on this guy. Coming back to the exhaust side, we do have a general thick mesh style spark arrestor. I don't generally like these, but they are really good for reducing noise on generators, but they do clog easier, so you got to maintain these a little more. So let's just roll around to this other side. All right, like I said, it's a really good looking little generator. Got our oil capacity here, 11.2 ounces. 1030 or 1040. I'll run 1540 in this, but you pick your poison on what you want to run. I'm in really hot climate, so I usually run a much higher viscosity oil. Some specifications here. We do have our spark plug, which is just a standard A5 RTC. Most of these small generators come with, and then it's got some crossovers here, which is nice. We will be changing out the spark plug, and we will be adding an hour meter to this when we do tear it down. I'm going to be going to a Denso Iridium spark plug, and I'll put the part number up here on the screen, and please check the video description for a whole bunch of part numbers and things for this generator, I like the hour meter and the little modifications I do, because this thing definitely needs an hour meter on it. But right inside there, you can get your spark plug. And that is it for our walk around. We're going to get this thing filled with oil and get on to our first start. Oil I'm going to use for break-in, 1540 Rotella. This is their T4, the cheap stuff. It's all I use for break-in oil because I don't run it for more than an hour on break-in. So, go ahead and take the cover off. This thing is so packed in here. This is like mind-blowing. This is the tightest fit. I can barely even get hands in here. It's the tightest fit I've ever seen in a little generator, so just keep that in mind. It is crazy how tight of a fit this is. Okay, so this is going to take a longer dipstick. We are going to put a magnetic dipstick in right away because we want that for break-in. All right, actually, what am I doing? Got to fill my container. All right, now this little container, check the video description for this little fill cup. This thing is amazing. It makes oil changes so easy because it's very accurate and it has the exact fluid ounces on the cup, and it's got a really nice spout, so it makes it very easy to add oil to a generator. Right to the edge of this guy. All right, so we're going to use a longer magnetic dipstick. Go ahead and put this guy in. Now this is similar to another generator I've had in here before. There's a chamfer on here, and it doesn't let the O-ring seat too well. So there's a link in the video description to some flat gaskets that seal much better on this type versus this O-ring that's on this magnetic dipstick here. So check the video description for that. Oh, totally failing putting that in. All right. Because with that chamfer, if I do tighten this down too much, the O-ring will just kind of squirt out and it won't seal very well, and we don't want that. So I'll have to get one of those flat gaskets. I've got them somewhere around here. But that's it for adding oil for the first start. This generator does not come with oil, and I'm totally good with that because it lets me use the stuff I want to use. So let's get on to the first start. We're going to flip our fuel cap on. We're going to take this off low idle, and we're going to turn our switch to choke. Yeah, let's see what happens. Let fuel kind of get in there a little bit. Fill the bowl of carb. Ooh, one pull. A little bit of smoke, so it had some oil in the top end probably from shipping. Definitely some vibration in this guy, but it did just start for its first start. I forgive it. Idle it up. I think it's kind of dancing a little bit on my floor because it's so lightweight. You kind of see it rotating around. Let's see if it does that at higher idle. Definitely some chassis vibration. And we've got her all torn down. This was not the most fun teardown. This reminded me a lot of the Pulsar, which is also Dinking made. The little pulsar reviewed, the 1000-watt unit, it actually looks like just a larger version of that engine. This is a 80cc, that one was a 60cc, but a lot of similarities. This one has even more plastic. I ended up having to completely take the rotating assembly off of its mounts, and still couldn't get the whole thing apart without serious teardown. So I'm like, you know what, that's fine, I'm gonna leave it there. I was able to pull this apart, peekaboo. There is the valve assembly, so it's a little bit more difficult to get to the valves because everything is so well encased. I have our valve cover. I've already added some grease to the valve cover itself, and this did come with a nice gasket, so it's a siliconized gasket, so it's less likely to stick, but I did add grease anyways to the valve cover, so when it's time to service the valves, that will come off without tearing the gasket, which that gasket will probably be very hard to find. Looking around here, this one is on full isolated mounts. That was one complaint I had of that little Pulsar, was it was half isolated, rubber isolated, or like silicone isolated, half was solid mounts. This one is full rubber mounts, but this engine does vibrate just like that Pulsar. You saw that on the first start, the whole generator was like dancing around and kind of sliding, so there's definitely more vibration in this engine family than most that I see. Let's see here. Not that that means it's a bad generator, it just means that's what it is. That is the coil part number on here. The front electronics panel was all tucked in nice and tidy. Everything is very crammed in here, by the way. The inverter has a very, very nice all aluminum machined heatsink. This is like an extruded heatsink, much different than the normal cast ones I see. So the inverter looks to be very nicely done. I could not find a model number on this inverter, but it looks like looks very, very well done. Carburetor. I believe this is going to be, yep, it's a Yinba. That's so common. That's like 99% of the carbs I see these days are Yinba. Let's see, there we go, 148F. There's a part number on that carb. 148F is also the model number of this little engine's rotating assembly. Come around to this side. You can actually see it down in there, 148F. Got our little fuel tank. It's a 0.6 something gallon fuel tank. It's a very small fuel tank. But again, tiny generator, super lightweight. I'm totally fine with that. I didn't take this thing completely apart also because the bolts on these mounts were put in with some serious ugga-duggas. I mean, they were completely seized in. It took me a while to actually break them free, and it was bending the brackets to get them to pop free. Just wanted to point that out. I also, another thing, just like that Pulsar that I reviewed, which Dinking product, right? I didn't like was the oil fill is on this side, but your air service door is on the opposite side. That was kind of weird. Spark plug is just the typical A5 RTC. Just a torch plug, and we will be replacing it with an IUF22 Denso. And I will be also adding, as I put this guy back together, we will be doing a hardline hour meter and tachometer on this since it's got no hour meter. You can see our switch assembly is just attached to the side panel. It was nice that the switch assembly was not attached to the actual external panel. It was attached to like the framework on the inside panel, which was actually nice because it can be a real pain in the butt to get that side cover off when it's attached to the actual full cover itself. So this is like the interior panel it's attached to. Let me get some information here. It'll take quite a bit to get to this rope assembly if you ever have to replace it. But like I said, full disclosure, this one is not my favorite generator. I can tell you that for serviceability. I think it's well built enough. It's going to give you a very long life. But for serviceability, there are generators that are much easy to service out there. Let's just put it that way. This one looks like it's more of a one-time build, and it's going to run until it's done, which will hopefully be a lot of hours. I did notice, did run a magnet on the bore. Check the bore on this. This is an aluminum, all aluminum bore. It is not an iron bore. So, something to keep in mind there. And that's it for our teardown. Now I get to have all the fun of putting this guy back together. Another thing I get frustrated with Dinking products a little bit, again, full disclosure here, is they don't give you your valve clearance spec in the manual. You should always do that. You don't want to have to chase it around. It's not like there's a local authorized Dinking service center near you. Just like with most import generators, it's you've got to be able to service it yourself. But that's a little tiny head. I mean, everything looks well built in there, very tidy. It's just if you need to do a full service work on this, you really got to take everything apart on this generator and get it completely out of there, out of its home. So, all right, guys, I'm gonna quit yapping. We're gonna get this back together. I'm gonna do an hour of break-in on it. I'm gonna do an oil change, and then we are going to do some load testing. So let's do the first oil change at 1 hour break-in. Let's see how she looks. Magnetic dipstick. Definitely some material on there. I've seen better, I've seen worse. This is kind of just average. Nothing to write home about here. Definitely just some material. But that's why we use these. That's why these are important. Gets all the particulates out that can actually cause damage. So let's see here. Throw that right there for the moment. Now we're going to measure to see if this thing burned any oil. So you remember when I first started up, we had a lot of smoke, a huge cloud of smoke came out of this thing, but that was from break-in oil, or not break-in oil, that was from oil that the manufacturer had put in, and it probably, as it got shipped and flipped upside down and all that, got up into everything. So that's fine. That's no big deal with the cloud. But let's see if we actually do or did lose any oil. So I'm going to pour it back into my measuring cup. Again, these are awesome. Check my video description for these. And did we lose any oil? Remember, the oil is hot, so it's going to appear higher than what we put in. And we did not lose any oil. This did not burn any oil. We're actually just under 13 ounces. We put in just under 12. And because it's hot, it's expanded. And yes, this is very hot. But it's showing that there's a little more in it than what we put in it. All right, let's take a look at that oil a little closer. I'll be right back. Completely average for a first break-in. There's no surprises here. A little bit of stripper dust, which is the aluminum shavings off the inside of the engine. We do a little gold panning here to kind of see what metal we got. There's a few little flakes in there. The gold miners call that stuff flour or something like that. Little tiny stuff. But anyways, yeah, that's what we got. Completely normal. Just a little bit of a latte look. Oil looks good. No complaints for a first break-in. One last note on oil, guys. 1540 Shell Rotella T6 is what I use here in the heat of Arizona. This is the magic sauce I like. That's very affordable. If you're in a really cold climate, I'd recommend going to 540. Or if it's wintertime here and we're camping, I use 540 as well in my generators. And one quick note, I did put my hour meter on this unit. You can see it right here. This is an hour and tachometer. And so this is just VHB taped right to the top of the generator after I cleaned the surfaces. And once I VHB taped it, I drilled one little tiny hole straight through the plastic. And then you can see the wire right here goes up inside and it's wrapped around the spark plug lead. That's how we get the signal. Saving your guys' ears, I'm just going to talk over this and have the generator volume turned down. I just took it off idle. And now let's go over to our scope and to our Fluke power analyzer. So the sine wave I could never get to look clean. I had a lot of little noise pins coming up. You can see it on the FFT a little bit higher. They weren't bad in amplitude. This is completely safe. But we did have a lot of noise. The Fluke says everything is good, but the scope says kind of WTF. Looking at our power meter here, just our monitor, we're going to present this thing a load now. Now, right where I'm pointing is the wattage of the load. Power factor is going to be 1.0, which you just see right there in the lower right-hand corner, and we're loading it up. The sine wave still looks completely funky. You can see some big pins or larger pins in the FFT, which is the top purple line on that scope. And as we get closer, what's going to happen here, and you guys will see it, once we get to about 1.7 kilowatts, distortion spikes on this thing, and the inverter goes into a triangle wave pretty much on output, meaning it has nothing left. So you're seeing it there right now. And I never could really get this generator past 1.71 kilowatt, which means flat out it does not meet its 1.8 kilowatt specification. So just wanted to throw that out there. This did not pass its spec. I chose the Nextpow to compare to the Dinking because they're both very similar in output and they're both very, very quiet generators. So at idle, standing right over the top of the units, the Dinking is quieter than the Nextpow, and that is very, very impressive. And when I moved out to 50 feet on idle with Eco on, the lead even increases further for the Dinking, which technically by the numbers they should be the same, right? It should be about 2 dB difference once we move out to 50 feet, but it wasn't. And that really has to do with the frequency that is coming out of the Dinking. It doesn't carry as far, so the SPL was lower. So when we go out to 50 feet at 50% load, we're virtually a tie. We're splitting hairs here. We're about the same. But once we go to 100% load with Eco off at 50 feet, the Dinking is a little bit louder than the Nextpow. Not by a lot, but it is noticeable. So that's it for our sound test. All right, so another full day of testing down. I loved reviewing this little Dinking generator. Dinking, thank you for sending it to me. I had a blast today. Viewers, new and old, love to hear from you in the comment section. What did you think of the data today? Tell me what you think about this generator. And let's jump right into the pros of what I liked about it. It is extremely compact and lightweight. Like, this is an easy to handle generator. Pretty much anybody, even my daughter, can carry this around. My daughter can start it. It is a one pull wonder. You yank that rope, it fires right up. I did not have one time, even on the first start, that did not start on the first pull. That is amazing. That speaks volumes. This thing is built like a freaking tank. I wish I could convey that, like what I experienced through the camera. I wish I could convey it about how solid it is. So when you bolt every panel on and you get it all stitched together, this thing is just a little beast of a generator. I like the build quality a lot. Let's get into the cons of this generator. So maintenance is kind of a pain in the butt on this. So, I mean, you can get to the spark plug, you can get to your oil change, the air filter's on the opposite side. It's just the internal layout is a little difficult to maintain. You got to take out 4 screws for each cover. Fine. Most people don't maintain it that much. I probably go overkill. I get that. That's fine. But if I got to do a pull rope on this thing or anything serious and really take this down, it's got to completely come apart. I mean, shell crack the works. You got to really dive into it to maintain this thing if you've got to go to that level, right? It's difficult in that respect compared to other models out there, so just to be clear. Now, the only thing that disappointed me on this generator, and it is a disappointment, it did not meet specification. They rate this at 1.8 kilowatts and 2.3 surge, but the surge numbers are just BS. Don't even pay attention to those. Always pay attention to the running watts, and that's what I expect it to be able to do, period, and sustained. I expect a generator to meet its running watts numbers. This one, once we got about 1.72, 1.73 kilowatt output, you saw the total harmonic distortion numbers jump up to 6%. They just automatically jumped, and it could not pass those values. Basically, about 1.74 is where we were stuck at, and the harmonic distortion went up, and the voltage started to drop off. And I tried and tried and tried off camera to get it to go further to try to squeak every last little bit out of it. It just doesn't have it. At least my sample doesn't. So it didn't meet its specification on output. So I expect the generator, like I said, it should at least meet its rating, and it should exceed it. The good generators do. Quick pause. I wanted to let you guys know I did try to work with Dinking. I let them know that this generator did not meet its output specification. They did respond right away. They told me that it has a very long break-in period, and because of very tight tolerances and and crank bearings or shims or something to that effect. I don't see how that's going to play in at all into the output of this generator because it does reach full RPM. It's not like it's being held back in any way, shape, or form. And so I did put an additional several hours on this, and it did not make any difference. I posed the question to Dinking, well, how many hours does it take before this can reach full output? And then it went silent. That's been probably 4 or 5 days now. I haven't heard a thing. I did send a follow-up, nothing on that. So is what it is. Just full disclosure for you guys. All right, let's talk about the noise. Perfectly safe for electronics, but it was not the prettiest waveform by any means. So the scope doesn't lie. The fluke kind of hides it a little bit. So it just says, yeah, these are the numbers. The total harmonic distortion numbers look good. You look at the scope and you're going, wow, that waveform is not super clean at all. And you see a lot of little jaggies in there. And on the FFT, there was a few little noise spikes in there. So it's not the cleanest output-wise, but don't be afraid of that. It's perfectly clean and suited to any electronics. So laptops, computers, anything like that, perfectly fine. Now, if this was my product and I had to rate this generator off the sample that I received, I could only call this a 1.7 kilowatt rated generator. I would not call it a 1.8, just throwing it out there. And with that, I'm not going to be doing the RBAC test. From my experience and just knowing what the power requirements are, especially on a hot summer day, it'd be a disservice to say, yeah, this thing could start it if it was on a more mild day like this. With the power limitations of this only getting to 1.7 and then distortion rising after that, I'm going to cap it at that. I'm just going to say, nope, not going to do it. And this will be a great generator for people that need 1.7 kilowatts and lower for whatever you're doing. You need to charge batteries. You need to use power tools within this rating, 1.7 kilowatt. Perfect for those use cases, and especially for those people that need something lightweight. But that's it, guys. That's all I got to say about this thing. Again, beautiful little product, and I hope this information helps you make an educated decision on what you would like to buy. Please check out all my other videos on generators if you're in the market, so I dig into them just like I did this one, and I hope it helps you out. So that's it for me, guys. Long day, so peace out. Catch you later.